Okay guys, it's been a long time coming. Here is my top 10 Hot Toys figures that I own in my personal collection. Roll that thing that starts at the start of every video that I do. You know, the little video segment that I do. What's it called? The intro. Yeah, cut to the intro. Ha, nailed it. I feel like I should be doing things like going in at number 10 or something like that, but I'm I don't think I will. I'm just these are just my top 10 and they are going to be specifically in no numerical order. So number 1 is not going to be better than number 10. It's only because these are my top 10 and you can swap and change them as much as you want in whatever numerical order you want. I'm rambling now, so I'm just going to shut the F up and get on with it. Okay, in at number 10 is the DX13 Battle Damage Terminator. This 2013 release gives a lot of modern 1/6 scale figures a run for its money. Despite being nearly 6 years old, the amount of detail is staggering. The head sculpts by Yuli and K.A. Kim are beautiful and are gross in equal measures. The wounds on the body and leg, plus interchangeable left arm, means this truly is a work of artistry. Sporting fine pleather trousers and boots, the stitching rivals many real-life fashion company stuff. The light-up eye feature gives the super battle damaged head a level of authenticity rarely achieved by an action figure. The accessories are plentiful and battle damaged arm are prime examples of why Hot Toys figures are always number 1. It's one of the only battle damage figures I can confidently say stands on its own without the clean version next to it. The T1000 diorama piece is beautifully chrome painted and can inject a bit more life into an already stunningly realistic figure. If you get the chance, pick up some of the DX10 accessories to bulk out this release, but they aren't essential. Other than that, I can hand on heart easily put the DX13 in my top 10. A classic for any scale figure enthusiast. In at number 9 is Hot Toys Robocop. Based on Paul Verhoeven's classic 1987 sci-fi action romp, Robocop was released by Hot Toys in 2014 to great praise, sporting a head sculpt by Kojun and Lee Soo-young. This figure is one of the most movie-accurate pieces Hot Toys have ever released. The body sculpt is almost perfect with engineering that has made Hot Toys world-renowned. The lack of articulation in the torso is surprisingly movie-specific, and instead of just resting on their laurels, they use this design flaw to their advantage to insert a sound box and build the internals with a die-cast frame, giving him a very satisfying feel and weight. Film-specific accessories of a spike fist and gun really add to the figure, and the fact that the gun can be stored in his leg puts this into a level of detail that goes beyond expectation. Robocop is an amazing film, and this figure is a must for any fan of the franchise. Okay, I didn't plan this, but in at number 8 is the DX08. The '89 Batman movie was a big deal at the time. The only Batman that the everyday public knew at that point was the campy, kitsch 66 Batman TV series. In the eyes of the masses, the Jingle Bells Batman smell song was more synonymous with the Dark Detective than that of the dark, broody tone of the comics. That was until Tim Burton and Warner Bros. Announced Batman. It had to separate itself from what had come before, and while it didn't win over a lot of the purists of the comics, the larger public lapped it up. It turned Batman into a badass and changed how people perceive Michael Keaton as an actor. A big element of the movie's success was down to Jack Nicholson, a truly respected actor. The fact he was on board made people sit up and notice. His portrayal of Joker took elements from both the darker iterations of the character mixed with a hint of Cesar Romero to create something both unique and somehow familiar. It's a character that is still strongly remembered in the collective consciousness and became the marker point for all other Jokers that would come afterwards. Hot Toys decided to honour this in 2012 when they released the DX08 Joker figure with a frighteningly realistic head sculpt by Yuli and clothing that was insanely accurate to the source material, and a slew of accessories that would put many other figures to shame. It's very easy to see why this is in my top 10. In at number 7 is the concept Captain America figure. Utilising all of the techniques they had honed through several iterations of Cap, Hot Toys realised the concept art for Cap from Ryan, I really wish I could pronounce his last name's Civil War design. It was eventually pushed out for something a bit more in keeping with the classic suit and evolution of the character's arc in the MCU. It was obviously the right choice, but it robbed us of a very awesome looking stealth-inspired cap. Luckily, it made Hot Toys sit up and notice though, and for the first 10-year celebration figure, they chose to go with Ryan's design. There were only 2 figures released eventually, which was a shame, as I would have loved to have seen more concept designs become fully realised into 3D figures in the future. Sporting a very sleek black number, the panels and lines are only really broken up with a nice understated Avengers logo placed prominently above Cap's heart. The suit allows for some traps that adds to the more realistic shape of Chris Evans, something a lot of the other suits were a bit lacking. The helmet head is a repurposed Civil War version that has been repainted black and comes with the interchangeable faceplates from the Civil War cap, which coincidentally is the one at the top of a lot of other people's best figures lists. The sleeves of the suit utilise the new fabric and print techniques that allow for decent articulation while still remaining figure hugging. This also adds to the realism, as fabric can appear a tad thick in 1/6 scale form and restrict movement. Just look at Winter Soldier capsuit for evidence of this. The rest of the figure pretty much repurposed a lot of items, including hands, boots and shields. However, all were painted beautifully, and while not breaking any literal moulds, it did ensure the use of the best version. This all added to a figure that has a lot of the best bits of most of the Captain figures, while reducing the flaws significantly. It still stands out today in my collection and is a blast to pose. I am very glad I jumped on this one. I swear to God I did not plan this. I'm only just realising now what's happened. But in at number 6 is the DX06 Jack Sparrow. Jack made a big impression when he appeared as a side character in 2003's Curse of the Black Pearl. Johnny Depp harnessed the powers of Keith Richards and Pepe Le Pew to bring the character to life, and was the standout character in the movie. At the time, people praised Depp and claimed he had indeed created a modern cinematic icon. Fast forward to a post-4 sequel world, and people were a little less willing to state they could watch this character in future films forever. Despite a bit of fatigue, the character is still beloved by many fans, and his first 3 films are still arguably classics. In 2011, Hot Toys decided to immortalise dear old Jack by obtaining a license for the On Stranger Tides movie, and capitalise on his popularity. With a head sculpt by Kojun, this quickly became a must-have in a lot of 1/6 scale collections. The realistic head with purrs allowed for greater range of expression. A second faceplate allowed to show both sides of Jack's personality, the cutthroat plunderer with a self-preservation obsession, and the cheeky, sometimes bumbling, but always lovable rogue side. The clothing was so intricately stitched it looked as if it was stolen from the costuming department, and accessories that redefined what a DX figure should look like. The figure is still a blast to pose, and although the DX15 came out and was an improvement in several areas, a lot of people, including myself, thought it wasn't necessary to upgrade, as the original is still a strong display piece, worthy of any film fan's collection. Yeah, this is actually getting really freaky because I did not plan this. But in at number 5 is the Iron Man Mark V. Iron Man has become somewhat of a flagship license for Hot Toys. Marvel Comics B-lister became Hollywood's A-lister almost overnight, thanks to the vision of Jon Favreau and pitch-perfect portrayal of Tony Stark by Robert Downey Jr. Try saying that 3 times fast. His charming charisma put Mr. Stark firmly on the map, and it's hard to see anyone else play the character moving forward in the inevitable reboots. But it's not just the charm that has made him a worldwide success. The fact the character uses mechanized suits also played a big part, especially in Asian territories. Places like China and Japan have always been big on robots and Gundam. The idea that ordinary people can evolve into something big and strong is universally themed, but whereas the majority of the Western world use costumes and clothing to depict the change, Asia focused more on technology, taking the heavy brunt of this transformation. So in a lot of ways, it was only a matter of time before both ideologies merged to create the perfect character for all nationalities. I guess that's just a long-winded way of saying that I love Iron Man. He was never on my radar growing up, but as the MCU progressed, I found the character got under my skin in a way that only Batman had done previously. As the films progressed, I became more invested in his plight and just relished every moment he appeared on screen. The majority of his films have been great, and despite the lukewarm reception of his second outing, I really liked the movie still. Sure, it had flaws, but I could watch Robert read flat-packed furniture instructions if he did it as Tony Stark. One of my favourite suits comes from Iron Man 2 in fact, the Mark V. This more portable armour has one of the coolest suit-up sequences in the whole of the MCU. The intricate design of the panels all add up to create a very unique suit and still stands out amongst all the other variants. Hot Toys originally released a plastic version in 2011 that still looks great, but the technology at the time left him being a tad undersized and with several flaws, including weak wrists, dull silver paintwork and cracked rubber on the arm joints. But since then, Hot Toys have honed and tweaked the production skills to incorporate better joint design, better chrome paint apps and intricate die-cast pieces. Howard and the team promised they would revisit the first 7 armours to improve on them, and so far they seem to be keeping their word. In all honesty, you could pretty much include any of the die-cast armours on this list, but for me, this is one of my favourites. I would choose the Mark III diecast as that's the OG Iron Man armour, but this Mark V's engineering makes the Mark III look like a statue. They've improved on it in every aspect, from the height to the electrics to the paint and articulation. They've also removed flaws like removing the rubber armpits, enforced the wrists, articulated more pieces of the armour and ensured it has a more robust skeletal frame. This isn't just a figure, it's an art piece. If they ever decided to make a one full scale version of this, I shudder to think of what they could do. Again, I could choose any of the diecast Iron Mans for this spot, but this just pit the Mark III to the post due to the intricate design work and overall quality presented in this piece. The number 4 spot goes to Thanos. This big purple a-hole really made an impression in Infinity War. He was more than just the villain of the week, and was so hyped up during the build up to the Avengers finale in Phase 3 that only something truly special would have been good enough. We got that and more with this Titan. He's being compared to Vader, which is no small achievement and will be remembered for years as one of cinema's classic villains. Hot Toys did not disappoint and did their best to try and capture the photorealism of the CGI character in all his glory. 2 intricately designed head sculpts, 2 arm and gauntlet combinations, and a newly designed body suggests they were investing in this character in a similar way to the Hulk. But this figure will be fondly remembered as the best version, as his portrayal in Infinity War is far superior than his more scaled-back personality in Endgame. But the real star of this figure is the paint application. The purple colour mixed with the super microscopic speckling on the skin means big lens cameras love this guy, and the choice of expressions and arms means you can vary the pose if he is feeling a little stale in your display. My only gripes are the fact that he doesn't have the snapping hand and the arm articulation in the right arm is pretty much redundant due to the way the rubber creases when you try to bend it. Other than that, this stands out in any collection with ease, and it's one of my favourites. And at number 3, Gladiator Hulk. He's big, he's mean, he's angry, and if any of the Avengers team should not be allowed access to sharp objects, it's this guy. In an attempt to progress the character, they took influence from the Planet Hulk comic books and put him in a gladiatorial arena versus the next strongest Avenger, Thor Odinson. But since the first Avengers figure, Hot Toys haven't stretched themselves and kept to the same body for all 3 figures. Why this one is in the list as opposed to both the Avengers version is simply because they got a perfect blend of both paint and design on this guy. The Avengers Hulk is great but lacks accessories. The Age of Ultron is great, but paint wise I feel he is a little bit too yellowy / jaundicey. But the second torso almost makes up for it. But this Hulk's paint is superior to both. The armour is expertly painted and designed, the weaponry is impressive, and the choice of head sculpts adds variety to the whole release. He's not too kind on space, but if you can fit him in, I think he will add a decent level of variety to the collection, as it has bags of personality and impresses all who gaze upon it. And that's why he's my number 3. Which is better than being called a number 2, which unfortunately the next lady gets the title of, and that lady is Hela. Sometimes a head sculpt comes along and blows everyone away. Sculpted by Jae Sung-yeom, sorry if I butchered your name mate, this one feels like they really shrunk the actress down to 1/6 scale and put her on the shelf. Usually the prototype is expertly painted and the final production version loses some of the wow factor. Here however, that doesn't seem to have happened. As soon as you look at it, you are in awe of how realistic it looks. The skin tone is perfect and eyeshadow is so subtly blended in, you'd think an actual makeup artist put it on. Costume wise, it looks pretty accurate to the film, although the green is a tad muted and the hands and boots are simply perfection. Accessory wise, the swords, axe and flame effect are amazing additions. However, a hair down head sculpt is sorely missing, and I'm surprised third party companies haven't jumped all over this opportunity. Now, I only mentioned the hair down head sculpt as the standout accessory is the hand holding Mjolnir. Mjolnir? Who knows? The hammer! It's a wonderful piece and really shows off how much attention they paid to the movie. But the fact she doesn't have the head sculpt to match detracts from an otherwise perfect figure. This might be one of those highly sought after figures in years to come, if this is the last we are to see of Hela in the MCU. But you know what? If it is, I'm okay with that, as this is an amazing figure that's up there with some of Hot Toys' best work. Okay, before we get to the number one, I just want to do some special mentions. These are some of the figures I considered for the top 10, but just ended up being pushed out for, some of my more favourite figures, shall we say. Okay, the first one is Rescue Captain America. A more dated figure now, but still an impressive piece on the shelf. Rescue Cap's clothing has a real classic look to it, with the majority of the figure utilising old school traditional fabric techniques to realise the costume in figure form. I'm a sucker for goggles on the head, and the layered helmet is a nice touch to give this a very screen accurate look. It's a great representation of Cap from the first movie and still stands out as a must-have variant. Next up is the Iron Man Mark 50. One of the newest Iron Man figures, this thoroughly well-engineered collector piece is something of a marvel. It articulates exceptionally well while maintaining a sleek outer armour that hides joints expertly. Great paint application and accessories means this nearly crept into the top 10, but was pushed out for my love of the Mark V suit more. My only gripes are the light up functions are a slog to turn on and off, plus the thigh joint betrays the otherwise seamless outer armour design. Still, it's no doubt in a lot of other people's top 10s for good reason, just not mine. The heart wants what the heart wants, I guess. Next up is the Mark I Ultron. A lot of people slept on this, including me when it first came out. It had one scene in the entire movie, so it was rightly low on a lot of people's lists. I was one of those people, and I sorely regret that way of thinking. What Hot Toys managed to achieve here is pretty much a 1/6 scale movie replica of the Mark I Ultron. The bare bones skeletal frame suggests this shouldn't be able to accommodate moving parts, but it actually has a surprising level of articulation. The finer details of the piece are all masterfully recreated, including wires and circuitry. All of this sculpting and design could be impressive enough, but the battle damaged paintwork really puts this above and beyond the average movie masterpiece release. The smoke damage, dents, scratches and oil leaks really pushes up the realism, and the simpler light up effects mean it is not such a chore to turn on and off when the fancy takes you. What this all adds up to is a simply impressive release that shouldn't be ignored by any 1/6 scale enthusiast. The next special mention is Elder Predator 2. The 2.0 versions of the Predator series is some of Hot Toys' finest work. It's not easy to recreate Stan Winston's creatures in figure form, but Hot Toys seem to do it better than anyone. I could easily choose any of the 2.0 Predator figures at this point. Classic and City Hunter are truly beastly pieces. However, this Elder Predator 2.0 always seems to catch my eye when put next to the others. It could be the more bluish hue of the dreadlocks, or the finer facial spikes that jut out of the sides, but are properly in scale. It could even be the smaller jewellery adornments that hang from his mandibles, but in all honesty, it's a mix of all these things. Plus, I've always been fascinated by the guy since his appearance in Predator 2 and gave Harrigan that flintlock pistol, which by coincidence is lovingly recreated here in 6 scale. Each Predator in this series has its strengths and weaknesses, but for some reason this just simply has an air of class and dignity that's hard to ignore. And the last of my special mentions is Ichabod Crane from Sleepy Hollow. Sleepy Hollow is a Halloween favourite of mine. I'm a massive Tim Burton fan, and the late 80s to early 2000s were some of Burton's best work. At the end of this winning streak came Sleepy Hollow, a classic retelling of the Washington Irvine book. Burton and Depp collaborated once again to moderate success. I was a tad disappointed on first viewing. The hammy acting and thick wax-like blood effects made it look a little corny, but I appreciated it more in subsequent viewings, as it was envisioned to be more like a classic Hammer horror style movie than a modern revision of the book. I was surprised when Hot Toys announced a figure from this property, but I figured they must have been fans of Burton and or Depp at the time. For whatever reason, Hot Toys delivered a surprisingly quality figure. Fine layered clothing, a decent sculpt of Depp, entirely accurate set of hands emblazoned with jewellery specific to the costume, and a lot of neat scaled down accessories that would satisfy any fan of the movie. Only things missing are a couple of decapitated heads and a 6-scale Hessian on a hell horse, complete with full-scale tree and windmill diorama. Plus, it wouldn't have been too hard for Hot Toys to recreate Christina Ricci's character from the film, because it too would probably have a dead-eyed, soulless expression like she did through the entire movie. But back to the figure. He fell off my top 10 simply because of other releases that were just a tad more superior. I doubt we'll ever see another version of this released, and I suspect this will be the premier Sleepy Hollow collectible to own for a very long time, if not forever. If you can hunt it down, do so. It's a figure worthy of mention. Okay, and the final figure in my top 10 is the PS4 Spider-Man Advance Suit. When Hot Toys announced they were going to do figures from the PS4 exclusive video game, I almost wept. The premier 1/6 scale company do dabble with video games, but they are still a rare occurrence, which is why this came as a pleasant surprise. I think the PS4 Spider-Man suit is a tad lacking in figure form. I think Marvel Legends for the low, SH Figure Arts for the mid tier, and Hot Toys for the high end. However, there is not much else. The design of this suit blew me away when I first saw it. The large white spider emblazoned on the chest with the smaller white accents on the arms and feet made this stand out from the usual red-blue suits that came before it. It didn't take long for me to put this at the top of my favourite suit designs of all time. It was interesting to see how Hot Toys would tackle this, as there is a lot of intricate design work that could have forced them to go down the same route as Arkham City Batman and turn him into a glorified statue. But this is where modern methods of figure design stepped in and allowed it to have the best of both worlds. While not crazy articulated, it does have adequate movement to allow for some life to be injected into it. The costume also has muscle details built in that enhance the realism and hide the joints more. I can't imagine any more accessories coming with this guy either. Extra web slingers, spider gadgets, multiple web options, different expressive eyes, tons of hands, bombs, and even a mobile phone. This ticks all the boxes. Only gripe is a lack of unmasked head, but I had no intentions of using it anyway, so the cost of producing that went into the other aspects of the figure, so I'm happy with it. Only reasons not to pick this up are that you hated the design or have no interest in the game. However, it ticks every box for me, so I'm happy to put this in my top 10. Okay guys, well I think I've done enough damage here now. I'm just going to leave it there. If you could do me a favour, if you could like and subscribe, that would be great. As the YouTube algorithms get changed, I'm likely going to drop off of people's radars very soon. So if you subscribe, you will always see when my new videos go up. Now get out of my cave and don't come back until you've written on a piece of paper 100 times, I will subscribe to this channel. Thanks a lot guys. Class dismissed.